Well, hello and welcome to another episode of In Conversation with Benedict Rogers, an interview series produced by Hong Kong Watch. And today it is an enormous privilege to be joined by Ai WeiWei, who needs, I think, no introduction, probably the best known internationally Chinese artist, filmmaker, and dissident. Ai WeiWei, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Let me start by asking, last week the Chinese Communist Party marked its 100th birthday, and you have experienced life under the rule of the CCP for over half its existence, going back to your father, the poet Ai Qing, being denounced in the Anti-Rightist Movement, your family being sent to a labor camp in Heilongjiang, growing up in Xinjiang, and then, of course, in more recent years, yourself being arrested, imprisoned, and now in exile. What are your reflections today on the 100 years of the CCP?
Well, I would say I think they are very successful in many ways. You know, from a party which from a few people become the biggest party and the longest probably party in dominate this power. And I don't think any other party had such history. And of course, during this whole process of this authoritarian control, there's endless struggle, and of course, they purged a lot of people, which has different opinions or even different attitude, and include my father's generation. My father was punished when, he was in a very high position in literature world in China. So the year I was born, we all got exiled, and many people died during this whole 20 years of re-education. And so even till today, they still have very strong control. The party is has dreamed to have another 100 years at least. They think they just like emperors in different dynasties, and they can last for very long.
Mm. Last week also marked the 24th anniversary of the handover of Hong Kong, and of course the first anniversary of the imposition of the national security law on Hong Kong. And in recent weeks, we've seen the closure of Apple Daily and continuing erosion of Hong Kong's freedoms. How do you see the situation in Hong Kong today?
I think the situation in Hong Kong has been dramatically changed. It's so dramatic, most people would not even believe they are what happens in front of them. But I predict from very beginning, this is not going to have this kind of end, and the end is yet to come, because in every aspect they would grab the power and to punish anybody who has different opinions. So Hong Kong just become another province or city in China. China would never lose control on their own territories. They're very proud of that. They said that anybody who would interfere would, they will smash them, or whatever the languages they use. But you can see there's no space for any kind of negotiation.
Mm. We'll come on in a moment to talk about your new film, but before we do, how do you see the impact of the national security law on the arts and culture in Hong Kong?
Well, Hong Kong will become another city in China. It's like Shenzhen or Shanghai. One hand, it still can be boom in certain way, but on the other hand, they were under very strong security control. That means there's no any freedom freedom of speech or political rights or human rights. So they believe that that works. Actually, that will work. Because communists, it's that's their character. They have to, Hong Kong just have to accept it. There's no other way, to, of course, there are always people who defend their rights, but will meet a very even more harsh response.
You've produced a new film on Hong Kong, Cockroach. What made you decide to make the film, and what is its message?
Well, Hong Kong has a very admirable fight. They put up the last fight, and in 2019, I realized this is probably the last opportunity to record this historical tragic events, and we did it, and we are very proud of we did it, because the history need some to have some evidence to reflect on. Most people we interviewed are being arrested or sentenced. And of course, the people on the street will never gathering like that for some time. Hopefully one day they will again, but not for some time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a very powerful film. I saw it recently in London, and thank you for making the film, because I think it's very important. Can I ask, what is your view of how the international community so far has responded to the dismantling of Hong Kong's freedoms, autonomy, rule of law, in total breach of an international treaty? And what more do you think could be done?
I think if we talk about the international community, or I don't know that it real exists. They all have different interests. They have a very different relations with China, and they treasure the Chinese relation more than anything else. Look what the German and the French and those people are just trying to grab as much business as possible with China, and they will not even condemn those kind of authoritarian brutal actions. The only words they use is they're concerned or deeply concerned, and we all know what that means. That means we give green light to whatever you want to do. So basically, I think the West already lost its leverage in competition with China. They understand it, and different states just grab their own possibilities and to benefit themselves.
Do you see any signs or any potential of some awakening to the dangers of the CCP among the democratic world, or is it too little too late?
First, I would not say it's too late, but I would say it's not possible, because the West does not really defend those basic rights. They maybe they never did. They used it during the Cold War time against Russia, but now I don't think they they care. There's so many issues in the world. They use double standard. They never really, defend humanity and the human rights in an absolute way. So if you don't do that, then your action is questionable. Under China, the government understands it perfectly well. They understand that the West is waving the flags, but the business is normal. It's not. And they have much deeper relations. The West and basically the world are dominated by corporate culture. The capitalism, and those corporate big companies, they couldn't enjoy more with Chinese market, and the Chinese is a labor market or consuming potentials. So this is a history. It's going to be writing in the history how West lost their, or how West is not West anymore. It's no East and West. There's no maps with the same kind of borders. As the Chinese official said, I'm inside you and you're inside me. What are you talking about? So they're right.
Given that, and given what the CCP has done to Hong Kong, what are the implications for Taiwan, and what should we do?
I think the Hong Kong is only one step. The second step, and the next step is Taiwan. And the CCP have a clear will or their goal, and also they have to take over Taiwan. That's from the first, second till the 100 years later. They never really change their mind. They think. I think that is their ambition, and I'm pretty much sure they will do it.
Do you see some hope in if there's not much hope from the West or from the free world? Do you see some hope from the fact that more and more Chinese dissidents and Hong Kongers, Tibetans, Uyghurs, and Taiwanese appear to be coming together more than was the case in the past? Does that give some cause for?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of people, of course, they're defending their rights, and but I don't think, if talk about a challenge with authoritarian states, I don't think their act can be counted as something very efficient, or I don't think so. It will always remain, but as the sanction is, it never really would affect the communist power.
As an artist and a filmmaker, what do you see in terms of the role that the arts and civil society around the world can play in solidarity with you and with others in China?
I see this kind of activities, but even my films cannot be showing in major film festivals in the West. They are really worried about their relations with China, and they don't care, how the film is and how important those films is. So, this is the fact. It's not a fantasy. So I don't know what to say.
Yes, it's definitely a depressing picture with the inaction of governments, the influence of business, and, as you say, the compromise of
not only business. Business is more understandable, but in universities, in research centers, in Hollywood, entertainment, all those, every aspect, China's influence is very broad. It's very deep.
Mm. Mm. Absolutely. Let me ask two last questions. Now that you have made Cockroach, what are your future plans? I know you have your memoir coming out later this year, 1,000 Years of Joys and Sorrows. Could you say a bit about that?
Yeah, it's a book I write in past 10 years since my detention. I want to leave my side of testimony or my record on my father and my struggle. That reflects the modern struggle of China and, among intellectuals or artists. But I think it's very meaningful to understand China by look through those details.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to reading it when it comes out. What other plans do you have going forward? Do you have new film projects or exhibitions?
Yes. Thank you for asking. I'm doing 2 films. One is about nature and about one tree. A tree. We cast a tree, which is a big tree, like 30 meters, over 30 meters high, 1,000 years old in Brazil. And we molded it in Brazil forest, then shipped all the molding back to China and cast it as a iron tree. And in maybe 3 weeks or 2 weeks, we'll be showing in Europe, in Portugal. A museum in Porto is going to show it first time. And I make a film about this tree, just called A Tree. And then that's about nature or humans' effort and in relating to nature. And another film I'm making is about human relations to animals. So yeah, I have 2 films come up. But of course, nobody is going to watch it. Film is dead end. So yeah.
Well, I will certainly watch it if I get a chance. So
I appreciate it. Very small audience. Big effort, small audience.
Yes. One final question. The things we've talked about and your perspectives are not very hopeful, and you're right, you're very realistic. But what final message would you give for our audience today about the human rights situation in China and Hong Kong and what we can do?
I still think after all, we all have our own life. That life just belongs to us for once. We have to do the right thing, Besides we have our principles, we have beliefs, right or wrong, and we have to support humanity and human rights, basic human rights. If we lost that battle, we would have lost everything.
Absolutely. Well, that's a very important message on which to end. Ai Weiwei, thank you very much for everything that you do to speak out for freedom and human rights, and for your time with me today.
Thank you.